Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to my channel. And today's discourse is one that has been much talked about in the collective right now. It's a big issue that is coming up, especially with the pressure divine feminines we have to go through, we face, irregardless of which stage of the journey that we may be in. This pressure cannot be ignored. So that's why today we're going to talk about the needs. What are our needs as divine feminines, and the truth that no one talks about, right? So there's a deep ache within us, in our body, and emotional exhaustion that feels so ancient, right? Like a quiet voice, our mind, telling us that something is off, even when we are not able to articulate it. So, for so long, the twin flame conversation has been tilted towards the behaviors, intentions, emotions of our beloved divine masculine, right? And people, you see, that's what we do, right? Because as divine feminines, we are constantly trying to analyze our DM's silence, his hesitation, his avoidance, because we are the ones talking about it. Divine masculines don't. And and then it's so important to also start noticing our needs as divine feminines, because it's often overshadowed. And hence why there's so much frustration and sadness and sorrow in the collective itself, because we have to, in a way, we are kind of leading the journey, right? And because of the pressure that we have to be the strong one, we have to be the intuitive one, we have to be the spiritually awakened one, the one who understands everything before it is said. But strength is not the same as emotional abundance, right? And intuition is not the same as support, and awareness is not the same as being cared for. So that's why today we are going to speak about the part of the journey that almost no one addresses. The part where, as the divine feminine, we begin to recognize the reality of our own emotional labor. The part where we realize that we have carried the weight of the connection for too long. And I'm not talking about just this lifetime, lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes, you know. And the part where we stop bypassing our own needs for the sake of the bond. So, this is the moment our journey actually deepens. And this is when the silent collapse happens within us. So, as divine feminines, we very rarely collapse outwardly, right? Because our collapse begins inside our chest. A heaviness that pulls us downward, a tiredness that does not come from physical fatigue, but from spiritual depletion. We can say that, right? So we begin to notice that we can feel everyone's emotions except our own. We become so empathic, like we show so much empathy. We carry the pain of the world on our shoulders. We overgive, we overdo, often moving into people pleasing tendencies. Often, I've noticed as divine feminines, we tend to be people pleasers too, which is my next discourse I'm planning to do. A little bit more focus on that. So, as we can sense our divine masculine's inner world with so much clarity, his pain, why he's upset, his sensitivity, yet we struggle to feel grounded in our own. And this internal imbalance creates a very specific type of emotional distortion. We become hyper aware of every shift in our connection, and we anticipate withdrawal before it happens. So sometimes it's self sabotage, sometimes it's just intuition. We sense emotional truth before our divine masculine would admit it, right? We notice every moment the field corrects, and we respond reflectively. There's a reflex, as if it's our responsibility to fix it. So we carry the weight of that as well. So we do not realize the constant attunement to our divine masculine becomes a slow erosion of our attunement to ourselves. So over time, we become half present in our own life. We are physically moving, emotionally functioning, spiritually aware, yet our energy is always tuned into our divine masculine's internal weather. And we are not clingy, we are not desperate, we are just responsive, we are intuitive, and we are extremely tired. This quiet depletion becomes the first sign of transformation. Because the emotional weight, this is the emotional weight we never signed up to carry. So let me speak with greater clarity, right? As the divine feminine, we are not meant to be the emotional container for ourselves and our divine masculine. Yet this is what we unconsciously do, we unconsciously become. We absorb our divine masculine's fears before he names them. We feel our divine masculine's desire even when he suppresses it. So that's why when he says I'm not interested, or he lashes out, we literally will have dreams that he's having problems, commitment issues, or maybe issues with his sacral. We sense our DM's love and we know that he's rejecting us or avoiding us because he's not able to be with us due to his own limitations or perceived limitations. So that's why we sense his love and his external rejection. It tends to play with our mind, right? So we sense our DM's love when he hides it, and we feel his avoidance long before anything occurs in the physical world. And if we are not careful, our intuition can become a burden. Instead of our intuition guiding us, it becomes a responsibility. We start believing we must understand our divine masculine fully in order to keep the connection stable. But the connection was never meant to be carried by us alone. So when we do this, we slipped into spiritual overfunctioning that drains our life force. And there is nothing romantic about burnout. There is nothing spiritual and emotional about self neglect. And there's nothing sacred about abandoning ourselves for love. And as divine feminines, we must reclaim the truth that our needs are not inconveniences. They are not weaknesses. They are not barriers to union. They are the structure through which union becomes possible. So that's why when we finally reach our threshold, there's a moment where every one of us divine feminines, we reach a moment where something shifts without warning. It's not anger, it's not resentment, it's clarity. A calm understanding that we cannot continue carrying the emotional frequency of both us and our divine masculine. And that's when we begin to resist the imbalance naturally. We stop chasing calm in a storm that we did not create. We stop interpreting every silence as our responsibility or allowing the connection to dictate our emotional rhythm, or we do not, and we stop sacrificing our internal balance in order to keep our divine masculines comfortable. This threshold is not a shutdown, it's a correction. Our field begins to reorganize itself. The parts of us that was stretched towards him, towards our divine masculine returning to us, it becomes stretched, right? So we feel a natural inward pull that we cannot explain logically. Our energy stops leaking into places where it's not honored. We sit with ourselves and realize that we had not been asked the simple question in a long time. How do we actually feel? What do we need? And what would make us feel supported? We have been surviving on intuition and hope while giving spiritual labor that no one acknowledges, right? And our heart finally says no. So, this is another big question, right? Why the collective focuses on him instead of us? This is the truth no one speaks aloud. As I had said early on in our discourse as well. Our beloved divine masculine's behavior is more dramatic externally, right? His fear is visible, his withdrawal is noticeable, his silence becomes the narrative, his avoidance becomes the context. Meanwhile, as divine feminines, our journey happens internally. Our pain is silent, our insight is private, our growth is invisible, our emotional strength is taken for granted because we rarely show the world how heavy our heart truly feels. We are the soul who stabilizes the connection, the one who prays, meditates, visualize, heal, talk to God. We are the ones who feel the connection at every dimensional level. And yet, the world rarely asks us what are our needs. You know, only a fellow divine feminine, only a fellow divine feminine will understand what we are going through, right? So this absence of care is a wound that we carry as divine feminines from childhood, past lives, and ancestral patterns. The expectation that we must be fine, the belief that we can handle anything, the assumption that our emotional resilience is infinite. So we are divine, but that does not mean we are invulnerable. It does not mean that we are not sensitive. The thing is, we are sensitive, intuitive, and we are in a human body. So we need care. So when our needs become the turning point, there is a profound moment in the journey where, as divine feminines, we start recognizing that our needs are not obstacles, they are actually guides. They are our soul's way of telling us what frequency we are meant to live in. And hence, these needs form the boundary that keeps us aligned with our higher self. So we begin to understand that neglecting our needs does not sustain the connection. It actually destabilizes it. So when we are exhausted, the field becomes shaky. When we are emotionally drained, the telepathic accuracy becomes chaotic. When we suppress our truth, our energy between our divine masculine loses symmetry, right? So our needs create the architecture of the bond. They define the tone, they set the standard, they influence our divine masculine's awakening. So when we honor our needs, the energy becomes stable. When we suppress our needs, the energy becomes distorted. So the quality of our self connection determines the quality of our stable union. That's why our awakening triggers our divine masculine's internal shift. Many of us divine feminines believe that expressing our needs will push our divine masculine further away. We fear that asking for consistency will overwhelm him. We worry that seeking emotional clarity will make him withdraw, but the opposite is always true. As the divine feminine, when we begin to restore our inner balance, the field forces our divine masculine into his next phase. He can no longer rely on emotional labor to soothe him. He can no longer hide from his own fears. He can no longer remain passive while we carry the weight. Our shift destabilizes his comfort zone, not to punish our divine masculine, but to awaken him. So when our energy stops compensating for him, our DM is left with the space he needs to confront himself. His avoidance becomes uncomfortable. His silence begins to feel unnatural. His distance creates pressure instead of safety. The old pattern collapses because our energy is no longer cushioning it for our beloved DM. So this is how he awakens, not through our sacrifice, but through our self alignment. That's our divine. That's our divine feminine's journey into maturity. So when we return to our own center, something profound happens. We begin to separate trauma from intuition. We begin to differentiate between fear and truth. We stop reacting from emotional memory and start responding from our awareness. And this level of clarity transforms us entirely. We feel more grounded, more stabilized, more connected to our inner voice, and we feel less pulled down by our DM's fluctuations because our boundaries become soft but firm, and our expectations become realistic but aligned, and our presence becomes steady and unmistakable. We no longer collapse into the connection, we stand beside it with strength. And this is the true goddess divine feminine power within us. Not because we are dominating the field, never, but because we have rooted inside ourselves stability. And what is our divine masculine's response to our evolution, right? As the divine feminine, when we step into this space, our beloved divine masculine cannot remain unchanged, right? The entire dynamic shifts because the gravitational force between you and your DM changes. Our DM feels for us, feels our absence in the place where we used to overgive. The people pleaser, which is another discourse that I'm going to do. Our divine masculine feels the silence where we used to offer reassurance, right? Our divine masculine feels the clarity where we used to soften ourselves for him. You know, especially when he comments, why are we being too much? Why are we going over the top? But then he was accepting it all, right? During the bubble phase. Like he was accepting everything. All the love, all the gifts, all the energies. He was spending all the time, right? Being in the presence of us. That's why when we start taking a step back, this creates an internal pressure that activates his next stage of growth. Our divine masculine begins to access emotions he once avoided. It starts to recognize that our needs are legitimate, and he begins to feel a desire to match our emotional maturity, and he begins to understand that union requires reciprocity. And that's why he may not move instantly, may resist, may fear the change, but the field does not let him regress because our evolution pulls our divine masculine upward. And this is when, as divine feminines, we return to ourselves. In this stage, as divine feminines, we experience a profound realization. The journey was never about carrying our divine masculine, it was about awakening ourselves. We reconnect with the parts of our identity that were overshadowed by emotional labor because we remember our edges, our desires, our voice, our vision. We become clear about what we genuinely want from partnership. Not spiritual fantasy, cosmic obligation, or karmic responsibility, but rather presence, emotional availability, reciprocal vulnerability, truth, wisdom, love that stands, not love that hides. And when we reach this clarity, we stop negotiating our worth. We stop bending to fit old patterns, paradigms. We stop shrinking our emotional reality to make the connection easier. We become the version of ourselves who is ready for the union. Stable union. Always talk about stable union. So that is why, guys, this discourse is vital. And I'm definitely going to expand on this, of course. I might do a part two. Because this discourse would land in your body with gentleness and clarity. Our needs matter. That's the underlying truth of this discourse. Our emotional reality is essential to our connection. Our exhaustion is not a flaw, it's a turning point. And it's not collapse, it's recalibration. That's why in a twin flame journey, we do not ask. The twin flame journey does not ask us to live without boundaries or emotional nourishment. It asks us to become aligned so deeply that the connection can finally meet us at our natural frequency. When we honor our needs, we honor the path. When we honor our needs, we honor our soul. And when we honor our needs, we open the real doorway to union. We are not demanding, we are not asking for too much. We are asking for what the journey always intended for us: a union, a stable union built on truth, reciprocity, emotional maturity, and spiritual alignment. And this moment, when we return to ourselves, the entire connection rises to meet us. That's when our divine masculine comes back. So, with that, I hope you have enjoyed this discourse. And if you guys want to work one on one with me, you can do so by booking the first time twin flame guidance session via the link. And if you guys, you can also book the 1 hour Ask Me Anything You Want session as well. And I just introduced the Mercury retrograde healing and activations, because this Mercury retrograde is very intense. And guys, I'm opening the 2311 portal activations and healing till Thursday if you guys are interested in booking the healing. And with that, this is an amazing time to get soul realignment done. So do check that out. And this is actually an amazing period to get any sort of healing done, because the energies, especially with Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, all of it, the retrogrades, it's such a powerful period to get any healing done as well. So with that, I'll see you all again with another discourse. I know this is a shorter one. I'm planning on doing long discourses, short discourses. I'm gonna, it's like whenever I get some time, I try to do a discourse. So with that, see you all soon. Love you all. Take care. Bye bye, and bye, and blessings to you always. Remember, external teachers like me are meant to inspire your internal teacher. Always trust your intuition, always trust God. Always, always, always remember that your higher self is always guiding you. And don't ever feel like you need to perform on your journey, because once you go past the performance stage, that's when everything changes in your journey. So, our needs are very, very important. Our needs are extremely important. With that, love you all and see you all soon. Bye bye.